You know, there's something we all carry around with us, this quiet assumption that if we just plan well enough, work hard enough, think clearly enough, life will cooperate. Life will follow our instructions. We make our 5-year plans, we set our goals, we build our routines, and somewhere deep in our minds, we believe, genuinely believe, that if we do everything right, life will behave. But here's what nobody tells you when you're young. Here's what the motivational posters leave out. Life doesn't obey you. It never did, and it never will. Now, before you think this is a pessimistic talk, stay with me. Because this isn't about giving up. This isn't about surrendering to chaos or accepting defeat. This is actually about something far more powerful. It's about understanding what life is actually doing to you, for you, and through you, even when it feels like it's working against you. Life doesn't obey you, but it does something better. It shapes you, the plans we make. Think about the last 5 years of your life. Just pause for a moment and think about it. How much of what happened did you actually plan? How much of it surprised you? How many of the most important things, the relationships, the losses, the breakthroughs, the breakdowns, how many of those were on your schedule? I'm willing to bet that the things that changed you the most were not the things you planned. The things that changed you were the things that happened to you unexpectedly. The phone call you didn't expect. The job you didn't get. The door that closed so hard it shook the walls of your confidence. The person who walked into your life at the most inconvenient time and somehow became the most important chapter of your story. We spend so much energy trying to control the outcome of our lives that we forget we are not the author of our circumstances. We are only the author of our response. And this distinction, this difference between controlling what happens and choosing how we respond, this is everything. This is the whole game. There's a beautiful arrogance in youth. And I say arrogance lovingly because I had it too. Where you think your plan is the plan. Where you think the map you drew is the actual territory. And then life comes along and says, very gently at first, and then sometimes very loudly, that's not how this works. Let me show you something better. What shaping actually feels like. Here's the problem with being shaped. It doesn't feel like growth when it's happening. It feels like loss. It feels like failure. It feels like the ground disappearing beneath your feet. When a sculptor works with stone, the stone doesn't know it's becoming something beautiful. All it knows, if stone could know anything, is that something is striking it. Something is chipping away at it. Something is removing pieces of it that it thought were permanent. That's what being shaped feels like from the inside. The divorce you didn't choose, the diagnosis that rearranged your entire understanding of time, the friendship that ended without a proper goodbye, the career that collapsed after years of investment. These things don't feel like shaping, they feel like destruction. But here's what I've come to understand and what I want you to sit with today. Destruction and shaping are sometimes the same process, seen from different angles. What looks like your life falling apart is often your life falling into place. Not immediately, not obviously, but eventually, if you stay present and pay attention, you begin to see the shape that was being carved. I know someone, and I suspect you know someone like this too, who lost their business at 41. Complete failure, everything gone. And in that moment, standing in the rubble of everything they had built, they had a choice. They could call that the end of their story, or they could ask a different question. Not, why did this happen to me? But, what is this making me capable of? That single question, what is this making me capable of, is one of the most powerful redirections available to a human being. The trap of resistance. Now let's talk about resistance, because resistance is our most natural response to being shaped. When things don't go according to plan, our first instinct is to resist, to fight, to insist that reality be different from what it is. And resistance has its place. I'm not telling you to be passive. I'm not telling you to accept injustice or to stop trying. That's not what I mean at all. What I mean is the deeper kind of resistance, the psychological resistance that says this shouldn't be happening, the kind that keeps you arguing with reality instead of engaging with it, the kind that keeps you living in a story about how things were supposed to go instead of navigating how things actually are. There's a tremendous amount of energy spent in that gap, the gap between what we expected and what is. And most of us live in that gap indefinitely. We set up camp there, we build a whole identity around the distance between what we planned and what happened. But that gap is not where your life is. Your life is in the present moment. Your life is in what's actually in front of you right now. And the longer you spend arguing with the past, resisting what already happened, the more of your present you give away for free. Think about it this way. Imagine you're walking down a path and you hit a massive boulder. It's blocking your way entirely. You didn't put it there. You didn't ask for it. It's not fair that it's there. And you're absolutely right. It's not fair. But standing in front of it screaming about how it shouldn't be there doesn't move it. At some point, you have to make a decision. You go around, you climb over, you find another path. Or you sit down and you rest and you figure out what this obstacle is teaching you about where you actually want to go. Stories of shaping, real lives redirected history is full of people whose greatest contributions came directly out of their greatest detours. Think about the writer who was rejected dozens of times before finding success, not despite those rejections, but through them. Each rejection taught them something about craft, about audience, about persistence. Each no was a chisel. Each closed door was a corridor leading somewhere unexpected. Think about the scientist who spent years working on one problem, failed to solve it, but in the failure accidentally discovered something far more important. The failure wasn't a detour from the destination. The failure was the destination. Think about the ordinary person, and these stories are everywhere if you look, who lost their job and in the terror and chaos of that loss discovered a talent they never would have explored otherwise, who started a business in their kitchen, who went back to school at 50, who rediscovered a passion buried under decades of practicality, who found themselves, almost by accident, living a life that was smaller in some ways and enormously larger in others. These aren't feel-good exceptions. These are the rule. These are what happens when people stop insisting on their original plan and start paying attention to what life is actually pointing them toward. The key insight is this: life doesn't waste experiences. Everything that happens to you is data. Everything that happens to you is raw material. The question is never, why is this happening? The question is, what am I supposed to build with this? The character question. And this brings me to what I think is the most important thing I want to say today. And it's a question, actually, not a statement. A question. Who are you becoming? Not what are you achieving, not what are you earning, not what are you building or buying or accumulating. Who are you becoming? Because that's what life is actually doing. Every experience, the wins, the losses, the embarrassments, the moments of grace, the moments of failure, every single one of them is working on your character. Life is constantly in the business of building your character, and character, unlike achievement, can never be taken away from you. You can lose money, you can lose status, you can lose health in some circumstances, you can lose relationships, but who you've become, the depth of your empathy, the strength of your courage, the breadth of your perspective, that stays with you. And here's what's remarkable. The painful experiences, the ones you would never choose, the ones you wish had never happened, those tend to be the most efficient character builders. Not the most enjoyable, but the most efficient. Comfort doesn't build character. Convenience doesn't build character. Getting everything you want doesn't build character. What builds character is navigating difficulty with integrity. What builds character is choosing to remain kind when you had every excuse to become bitter. What builds character is getting back up, not because you're certain it will work out, but because you've decided that staying down is not an option. That's what being shaped looks like from the outside. From the inside, it looks like suffering. But from the outside, over time, people look at that person and say, there is something different about them. There is a depth there. There is a steadiness. There is something I trust. That something is the shape that life carved. Letting go of the original script. One of the hardest things in life is releasing the original script. We all come into adulthood with a script. Some of it was written by our parents, some by our culture, some by our own dreams. The script says, By this age, you should be here. By this point, you should have this. This is the sequence. This is the timeline. This is what success looks like. This is what happiness looks like. This is the shape your life is supposed to take. And when life doesn't follow the script, and it won't, not entirely, not for anyone, we have two choices. We can grip the script tighter. We can insist on the original plan with more desperation. We can measure ourselves against the script every day and find ourselves constantly failing. We can live in a permanent state of behind, of not yet, of almost there. Or we can put the script down, not in defeat, not in resignation, but in trust. Trust that the actual story unfolding around you, the one you didn't write, the one you didn't plan, might be more interesting, more meaningful, and ultimately more yours than anything your 22-year-old self could have imagined. I want to say something to the people in this room, or wherever you're listening to this, who feel behind, who feel like they missed something, who feel like life went off the rails somewhere and they're still trying to get back on track. You are not behind. There is no track. There never was. There was only ever the path you're on right now and the next step forward. The moment you stop trying to get back to the life you planned and start fully inhabiting the life you're actually in, that's when things begin to shift. Paying attention to what life is pointing at. So if life is always shaping us, always pointing us somewhere, how do we learn to pay attention? How do we read what life is trying to tell us? I think it starts with honest reflection. Not the kind of reflection that looks for confirmation of what we already believe, but the kind that genuinely asks, what am I being shown here? When you keep running into the same wall, the same kind of relationship ending the same way, the same kind of conflict arising in every workplace you enter, the same feeling of emptiness despite accumulating more of what you thought you wanted, life is not punishing you. Life is pointing. It's saying, look here, pay attention here. There's something here that hasn't been understood yet. There's something here that needs to change, not out there in the world, but in here, in you. And that's not a comfortable message. We much prefer to believe that our problems are external, that if the circumstances were different, we would be fine. If the people around us were different, if the economy were different, if our luck were different, then we'd be okay. And sometimes that's true. External circumstances matter enormously. I don't want to minimize that. But even within difficult external circumstances, the invitation is always the same. What is this calling out of me? What quality, what capacity, what deeper version of myself is being summoned by this situation? Every difficult season in your life is calling something out of you. And whatever it's calling, courage, patience, creativity, compassion, honesty, that thing it's calling was always in you. Life doesn't create qualities in you, it reveals them, it draws them to the surface, and when you don't use them, life creates situations that make it impossible to ignore them anymore. The freedom in surrender. I want to use the word surrender here very carefully because it's a word that's often misunderstood. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. Surrender doesn't mean passivity or defeat or collapse. Surrender means releasing your grip on the idea that you are in total control. Surrender means acknowledging that you are a participant in your life, not the sole author of it. Surrender means opening your hands and saying, I will do everything in my power, and then I will trust the process. And in that surrender, paradoxically, there is enormous freedom. Because when you stop spending all your energy trying to control the uncontrollable, you have so much more energy for the things that are actually within your reach. Your attitude, your effort, your kindness, your attention, your presence, your choices day by day. You can't control whether the storm comes, but you can control how you build your shelter. You can't control whether you get sick, but you can control how you respond to illness, what you learn from it, how it reorganizes your priorities, what it teaches you about what actually matters. You can't control whether people love you the way you need to be loved, but you can control how you show up in relationships. You can control the kind of person you're choosing to become. And here's the remarkable thing about focusing on what you can control, your energy, your character, your response, is that over time, those things ripple outward. The shape of your inner life begins to influence the shape of your outer life. Not immediately, not perfectly, but unmistakably over time. Embrace the shape you're becoming. So I want to close with this. You are being shaped right now, at this very moment in your life. Whatever you're going through, the uncertainty, the grief, the waiting, the striving, the confusion, the unexpected joy, it is all part of a shaping process that is larger than your plan and wiser than your timeline. You are not a finished product. You are a work in progress, and works in progress are supposed to be unresolved. They're supposed to look incomplete from certain angles. They're supposed to have rough edges and unfinished corners. That's not a flaw. That's the nature of becoming. The most important thing you can do, the single most important thing, is not to stop the shaping. It's not to wrap yourself in so much protection that nothing can reach you. Because if nothing can reach you, nothing can change you. And if nothing can change you, nothing can grow you. The most important thing you can do is stay open, stay present, stay curious about what this season of your life is trying to make you into. Ask better questions. Not why is this happening to me, but what is this making possible? Not when will things go back to normal, but what is the new normal showing me? Not how do I get my old life back, but what is this new life asking me to become? Life doesn't obey you. It's under no obligation to follow your instructions or meet your deadlines or respect your timeline. Life moves at its own pace, in its own direction, with its own intelligence. But here's what I know to be true. It is moving towards something. And that something, if you stay open, if you stay honest, if you keep choosing growth over comfort, is a version of you that your current self can barely imagine. Don't fight the shaping. Become it.